Every single day, roughly 11,000 Americans turn 50, and most of them share one quiet thought they'd never post online. I wasted my best years. Not because their lives were empty, but because their retirement accounts are. They look at the balance, or worse, the absence of a balance, and something inside them just shuts. They stop looking. They stop planning. They tell themselves a story that sounds logical but is actually poison. There's no point now. I used to believe that story too. It sounds airtight. The math seems clear. Someone who started investing at 25 crushed it. Someone starting at 52 can't catch up. Case closed. Except it's not closed. It's not even the right case. Because we've been measuring the wrong thing. We keep comparing late starters to early starters when we should be comparing late starters to never starters. And that comparison changes everything. There's a man named Ray who works at a distribution warehouse outside of Memphis. At 56, he had $1,100 in a savings account, and a vague sense that retirement was something that happened to other people. Not wealthy people necessarily, just people who had figured something out that he hadn't. His coworkers talked about their 401ks at lunch, and he'd go quiet, stare at his sandwich, change the subject. He told me he felt like he was standing outside a building where a party was happening and the doors had locked years ago. That was 4 years ago. Ray is 60 now. He has just over $94,000 invested. He's not rich. He's not even close to rich. But he told me something that stuck with me. He said for the first time in my adult life, I feel like I'm walking towards something instead of running from something. $94,000 bought him that. Not a mansion, not a yacht. Direction. Let me be honest with you before we go any further. I am not a financial advisor. I don't know your tax situation, your debts, your medical bills, your family obligations. Everything I'm about to share is based on publicly available data and mathematical realities. What you do with it is entirely your decision. Now let's talk about the thing that everyone gets wrong about compound interest. People treat it like a light switch. Either you flipped it on at 22 and you're golden, or you missed it and you're sitting in the dark forever. But compound interest isn't a light switch. It's a dial. And yes, the earlier you turn that dial, the louder the music gets. Nobody is disputing that. But turning it to 3 is better than leaving it at 0. Turning it to 5 at age 50 still produces sound. The silence only continues if you never touch the dial at all. Here's a number that should reframe how you think about this. According to the Federal Reserve's Survey of Consumer Finances, the median retirement savings for American households, where the head is between 55 and 64, is roughly $185,000. That's the middle. Half of people in that age range have less than that. A significant percentage have nothing at all. So when you're sitting there at 48 or 53 or 57, feeling like you're the only person who dropped the ball, understand that you're standing in the most crowded room in America. Almost everyone is in here with you. The difference isn't between you and the people who started early. The difference is between you and the version of yourself who does something about it starting now. Let me walk you through a scenario that nobody in finance talks about, because it's not dramatic enough for a headline. Imagine you're 52. You earn $65,000 a year. You've saved essentially nothing for retirement, but your company offers a 401k with a 50% match up to 6% of your salary. You start contributing 6%. That's $3,900 from you, $1,950 from your employer. You also open a Roth IRA and put in $200 a month. Total annual investment, roughly $8,250 of your own money plus the employer match. Assuming an 8% average annual return, which is below the historical nominal average of the S&P 500, by age 67, you'd have approximately $285,000. Now add Social Security. If your average indexed monthly earnings put you at around $2,200 a month at full retirement age, that's $26,400 a year. Combined with strategic withdrawals from your portfolio, you're looking at a retirement that actually functions. Not lavishly, but it functions. You have heat in the winter. You have groceries without anxiety. You have options. And here's what makes me genuinely angry about the "it's too late" narrative. It ignores the entire structure that the government built, specifically for people in this situation. Catch-up contributions exist for a reason. In 2026, if you're over 50, you can put $32,500 into a 401k. If you're between 60 and 63, there's a super catch-up that lets you contribute up to $35,750. The IRS literally carved out extra room for late starters. They looked at the data, saw that millions of Americans weren't saving enough in their younger years, and said, here, we'll give you more space. And most people don't even know about it. They're so busy mourning the decades they lost that they can't see the decade right in front of them. Something else nobody mentions: the person who starts investing at 50 is not the same person who could have started at 25. This sounds obvious, but think about what it actually means. At 25, most people have entry-level salaries. They have student debt. They have no idea what they're doing with money because nobody taught them. The Bureau of Labor Statistics shows that median weekly earnings for workers aged 25 to 34 are significantly lower than for workers aged 45 to 54. Older workers earn more, not all of them, and I'm not minimizing anyone's financial struggles, but on average, the person who's 50 has more income to direct toward investing than the person who's 25. The hypothetical young investor who puts away $500 a month for 40 years often couldn't actually afford that $500 in their 20s. The late starter sometimes can. There's also something that compound interest calculators can't measure, and it might be the most valuable thing a late starter has: clarity. When you're 25, you don't really know what retirement means to you. You're saving for an abstraction. When you're 52, you know exactly what you want. You know whether you want to travel or stay close to your grandkids. You know whether you need a large house or whether a smaller place with a garden would make you happier. You know what your actual expenses look like because you've been living your life long enough to understand your patterns. That clarity means every dollar you invest is more intentional than the dollars a 25-year-old invests. You're not guessing at a target, you're building towards something specific. But I need to talk about the trap because there is a very real trap that catches late starters more than anyone else. It's the desperation play. You realize you're behind, and suddenly that crypto token your nephew mentioned sounds reasonable. That options trading course advertised on social media starts looking like a shortcut. A penny stock your buddy at work swears is about to explode becomes tempting in a way it never would have been if you'd started investing 20 years ago. This is where late starters destroy themselves. Not slowly through inaction, but quickly through recklessness. The data on this is devastating. FINRA research shows that investors who chase high returns through speculative trading underperform simple index fund investors by wide margins over time. Dalbar's annual studies consistently find that the average equity investor earns significantly less than the S&P 500 because of behavioral mistakes: buying when things feel exciting, selling when things feel terrifying. If you're starting late, you need growth. Yes, but you need growth you can actually capture, which means growth you won't panic out of when the market drops 25% on a random Tuesday. A diversified portfolio of low-cost index funds isn't exciting. It's not going to make anyone's eyes light up at a dinner party. But it works. It has worked for 100 years. Across wars, depressions, pandemics, and every other crisis humans have invented. Boring is the strategy. Excitement is the risk. Let me talk about something that gets overlooked in every retirement conversation: your home. If you're 55 and you own a house in an area where property values have risen, you might be sitting on more retirement funding than you realize. The median home price in the United States has roughly doubled over the past decade. Someone who bought a home for $180,000 in 2015 might be sitting on $350,000 or more in equity today. Downsizing, relocating to a lower-cost area, these moves can inject capital into your retirement portfolio in a way that decades of modest savings couldn't. I'm not saying it's easy. Your home is where your memories live. Your neighbors know your name. Your grandkids know which room is theirs when they visit. But having the conversation with yourself about whether your housing situation is optimized for your next chapter is worth the discomfort. Some people discover that selling a home they're emotionally attached to funds an entire retirement they thought was impossible. Social Security deserves more attention than it usually gets in these discussions. Because for late starters, optimizing your benefit can matter more than your entire investment portfolio. If you claim at 62, you get a permanently reduced benefit. If you wait until 70, your monthly check is roughly 77% higher than it would have been at 62. For someone whose full retirement age benefit is $2,400 a month, that's the difference between about $1,680 at 62 and roughly $2,976 at 70. Over a 20-year retirement, that difference adds up to more than $310,000. Working a few extra years, or even doing part-time work to bridge the gap, can be one of the single most valuable financial decisions a late starter makes. And yet most people claim early because they're afraid the money won't be there. It's the same fear-based thinking that kept them from investing in the first place. I want to address the emotional side of this because I think it's where the real battle is fought. The math is actually the easy part. The hard part is forgiving yourself. You look back at your 30s and you see the vacations you charged to credit cards. You see the raises you spent instead of saved. You see the years you worked without contributing a dime to your 401k because you figured you'd start next year. And that retrospective judgment is crushing. It paralyzes people more effectively than any bear market ever could. But here's what I've noticed about regret. It only has power. When it's paired with inaction, regret plus action becomes wisdom. You learn something expensive about yourself, and now you're applying that lesson. That's not failure. That's the definition of growth. Regret plus continued inaction becomes bitterness, and bitterness compounds. Just like interest, except it compounds in the wrong direction. There's a study from the field of behavioral economics that I think about often. Researchers found that people who frame a goal as a fresh start are dramatically more likely to follow through. It doesn't matter whether the fresh start is January 1st, a Monday, or the day after their birthday. The psychological mechanism is the same. You create a mental boundary between the old you and the new you, and that boundary gives you permission to behave differently. You don't need a special date. You don't need to wait for the new year or your next birthday or some milestone that feels significant. Today works. Right now works. The version of you who hadn't started investing existed up until this moment. The version of you who has started investing can exist from this moment forward. That's the only boundary that matters. Let me tell you what to do with the next 48 hours, because intention without action is just daydreaming. Tonight, look up whether your employer offers a retirement plan and whether there's a match you're not capturing. If there is, that match is an instant 50% or 100% return on your money before the market even does anything. Tomorrow morning, if your employer has a plan, call HR or log in to the benefits portal and increase your contribution. If they don't, open a Roth IRA at any major brokerage. It takes about 15 minutes. Fund it with whatever you can, $50, $100. The number matters less than the act. Then set up automatic contributions so the money moves before you can talk yourself out of it. Before the weekend, look up your estimated Social Security benefit at the SSA website. See what happens to your number if you wait until 67 instead of claiming at 62. See what happens if you can hold out until 70. Those numbers will motivate you more than any video on the internet. And finally, stop comparing your Chapter 4 to someone else's Chapter 1. The 28-year-old who just opened their first Roth IRA is doing good for them, but their journey has nothing to do with yours. You've lived a life. You've raised kids or built a career or survived things that would have broken lesser people. You've earned the wisdom that comes from making mistakes and learning from them. That wisdom, applied to investing, is worth more than you think. Ray, the warehouse worker from Memphis, he told me something else the last time we talked. He said the money is great, but what really changed is that I stopped being afraid of the mail. He used to dread bills, statements, anything in an envelope. Now he opens them. He looks at his balance. He watches it grow, slowly, imperfectly, but unmistakably upward. That's what starting gives you. Not perfection, not some fantasy retirement on a magazine cover. It gives you the absence of dread. It gives you the quiet confidence of knowing that future you is being taken care of by present you. You're going to be 65 someday, or 70, or 80. That's happening regardless of what you do today. The only variable is whether that person, the future version of you, has something to work with or nothing at all. And nothing is what's currently scheduled if you keep believing the lie that your time has passed. Your time hasn't passed. Some of it has, sure, but some of it is still right here, waiting for you to use it. Not perfectly, not optimally, but meaningfully. And meaningful beats optimal every single day of the week. Start now.